mute the meeting broadcast on FLTV, YouTube, Comcast, or AT&T if you are watching this simultaneously, and to avoid delays with the broadcast. I will call upon you when it is your turn to speak and also notify you when your time has expired. City staff has automatically added speakers in a listen-only mode, and you will be unmuted to speak when recognized. Finally, once you have completed speaking, you will be muted and may either hang up to exit the meeting or stay connected to listen to the remainder of the meeting. Now, these instructions are really more geared towards a regular meeting. We're just having a conference meeting here, and there's no limit on the amount of time you can speak. Anyway, welcome everybody. I'm so excited that we're finally getting to meet. We have a lot to talk about, so at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to the chair of the Citizen Police Review Board, Christina Curry. Christina.
Thank you, Mayor. What I'd like to start with is, for each member of the board, if you could just introduce yourself, because I think that you probably know your commissioner who appointed you, I think, but just so everybody else knows who you are. So if you could say hi, introduce yourself, and I think it would be nice for us to hear why it is that you're serving on this board. I'll start with myself. I was recently reappointed by Commissioner Sorensen. I'm serving as the chair, and the reason why I'm volunteering my time on the board is because I think it goes right along with, it's natural for me because of my line of work, and it's really something that I think is just important to have a discussion on in this community. I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Cecil Stone. Vice Chair, are you there?
See him, Christina. Need to call back in. He was live on video, and now I don't even see his name.
Okay, Ms. Weeks.
Good. Is it still morning? Good morning. I'm Bernadette Norris Weeks. I'm an attorney. I was appointed by Mayor Trentalis. This also falls within the type of work that I do. In part, I represent governmental entities, largely as a part of my my work. And this is a very timely issue and one that is worthy of engagement. So happy to be here, and thanks for having me. And I'm not quite sure why I'm showing twice, but
Sergeant Graves.
I'm showing twice on the screen. Maybe my office can help me figure that out.
Larger than life, Bernadette.
So Bernadette,
what can I say? What can I say?
Yeah, so you'll see yourself logged in, and this is for everybody. Then you also see a live view. If you happen to be the one speaking, then you're going to appear in both places.
I see that you zoomed me in this time.
Sergeant Graves.
Good morning, Sergeant Graves. I've been with the department 11 years now. I was recommended by the former chief to be a part of the panel. I'm doing so in part to help the civilians in the community better understand what it is that law enforcement does, and so we can have much more transparency for our community.
Thank you. Vice Chair Stone, we missed you. Can you just introduce yourself and let everybody know why you're dedicating your time to this board, please?
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. I think I had some technical problems here. But Cecil Stone, I'm currently a lieutenant with the police department, been on the board now for maybe about 4 or 5 years. Currently working in operation and patrol. And I'm here volunteering my time so that I can help bridge that gap and increase the public trust with the police and the community, and oversighting all of the current affairs investigation regarding complaints and allegations against officers.
Thank you. Carol Ortman.
Yes, good morning. I'm Carol Lee Ortman. I have been approved for this board by Commissioner Moritas. I'm serving now, I guess, my second term. I guess it is. I've lost track. I am a retiree and citizen of Fort Lauderdale after spending 30 years running your court system as the administrator. I sincerely believe in what goes on here in Fort Lauderdale, and it's my interest as a citizen to be absolutely sure that we continue to have the reputation and be the city.
Okay, thank you. Sergeant Mosseri.
So I'm having some technical difficulties coming on the ski. I've been with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department for 15 years. I'm head youth force defensive instructors for the department. Let's put forward to
Can you hold on one second? Officer, can you hold on 1 second? We seem to be technical difficulties.
Let's try if you go to non-video streaming and just go audio. Let's see if that might make it catch up a little bit better. Go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Sergeant Mosseri. Start over.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
All right. I've been with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department for about 15 years. I'm one of the head use of force defensive tactics instructors for the department. I was put on the board to help answer questions in relation to defensive tactics, use of force, things along the lines of that.
Okay, thank you. And Paul Eichner.
Good morning. My name is Paul Eichner, and I'm an attorney. I'm recently retired. I've been active in the community, both on the political side and on the governmental side for a couple, 3 decades now. And I believe you need to participate in the community to make it better. And I'm trying to live by what I believe. And once upon a time, many years ago, I was a police legal advisor. I've represented local government agencies, have an understanding of how government works, and I understand what the public wants. And somewhere in between, everybody can get along.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any board member that I missed? Speak up now. Okay, I don't think so. The reason why I did that is because I think it's important for everybody to understand the caliber of volunteers that we have here on this board. We all have other things we could be doing, but we're really dedicated to this. So the first thing that we have on our agenda is current events and overview of the police department. I don't think we need to get into what the current events are. I think that we're all educated people and we know what the current events are. And I think we're all well aware of a transition that is underway at the Fort Lauderdale Police Department.
Well,
I don't have anything more to add to that item.
if I may add to that, first of all, I think when Bernadette said that this is a timely meeting, her appointment is timely, I think it refers to the fact that we are part of a national engagement that is taking place in many cities throughout the country, in which people have been protesting racial injustice, bigotry, gun violence, and Fort Lauderdale has seen its own measure of all of that. And I think it's important that we meet today, and it's been a long time coming, to be able to address those issues and to see how we can incorporate changes within our own infrastructure in order to make Fort Lauderdale a better place. I think a lot of it has to do with trying to provide better reasons or more reasons for people to trust law enforcement, and at the same time for people to feel comfortable in knowing that law enforcement is there to protect them. And so we have a lot on our plate, and I agree with you, Christina. There's a tremendous amount of talent on the board, and with a lot of experience, a lot of background. But more importantly, I feel that there's a commitment amongst all of them to try to come up with answers to do the right thing. And so current events, basically, we responded to a lot of outcry. Part of it resulted in the transfer of our police chief to another position, and we have an interim police chief, Karen Dietrich, with whom we are working together. I believe she's on the call. And but we also are looking for more systemic changes within our police department. But having said that, we also had the opportunity to meet with Latoya Ratliff a couple of weeks ago, who came to City Hall and met with us, not to threaten, but to engage us, to talk to us about how we can make changes, how she saw where things could be made better. And we hope to be able to continue that conversation with her and others going forward. One of the things that I want to accomplish, and I think most of the commission wants to accomplish, is to see how we can look to the Citizen Police Review Board as an opportunity to provide greater citizen input into this process. And I've been looking at other cities. In fact, in the Miami Herald today, there was an article about how Miami-Dade County is re-engaging its own Citizen Police Review Board. They call it by another name. And there was some debate as to whether or not it should have subpoena powers or not, and so forth. So those are kinds of things that we'll talk about too today, I hope, as we move forward in seeing how we're going to better able to bring the public into the process, and at the same time help to refine the procedures within our police department so that people feel that there's trust and that there's protection all at the same time. Thank you.
Okay, so what I was thinking that we could do is start with a little bit of background so that we're all kind of on the same page as the types of police oversights that are out there. There's 3 types across our nation. So I thought if we just did a little refresher on what those 3 types are, that might help get us on all the same page, because I think over the past few months in the media, we've heard things about different types of things that should be added and should be appropriate. And I think it's just good for us to have an understanding of where we fall in terms of the 3 that are out there.
So you're referring to Business 2, Exhibit 1, correct?
Yeah, I'm moving on to 2. Yeah. Okay, so there was a PowerPoint that was attached to that. Okay, so here it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try to just rip through it. And then I think this will give us a good basis, and then we can have a conversation afterwards. I think I have some recommendations of some things I think we can do to add to what our board is doing. And I'm sure that some of my colleagues here too also, have some. And then I would like to hear what the commission thinks on what you've been envisioning we do. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So next slide, please. Yes. Okay. So basically in the United States, there's 3 different types of oversight models. You have the first one that are investigation focused agencies. This is probably along the lines of what the mayor was referencing he read in the newspaper today. These are boards that have a complex organization form. They're expensive to run. They're staffed by civilian investigators. They're replacing or duplicating IA, and they do their independent investigations. The next most common model is the review focused. This is what ours is most closely related to. Typically, review focused boards, what they do is they look at the quality of an IA investigation. So they get all the investigated materials and they say, we agree, we don't agree, and they may make recommendations relating to the investigation. Because they're usually run by volunteers, they're the cheapest, they obviously have a lack of resources and limited authority. Then the next one that you have typically is the auditor monitor agencies. Those ones are focusing more on broader patterns in oversight. So they're looking at things over a period of time and they're finding patterns within the quality, the findings, and the discipline of investigations. Sometimes they monitor or participate in investigations, but they're more of a long-term view and they fall in the middle of where we are and then the cost of the investigation focused agencies, okay? Next slide, please. So this is small, but if you expand it, what you can do is you can kind of see a table that shows each type of board, what they're doing. So for example, deciding how a complaint will be handled. Well, that's rarely done by boards like ours. Independent investigations, rarely done by boards like ours. So any suggestions that may have come up in the past over what our board should be doing, you can kind of plug it in here to see, well, then what type of board would our city need in order to accomplish a goal that's, being presented. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page with what the Citizens Police Review Board has the authority to do today. because I think there might be a little bit of confusion based on how things used to be and how they are now. So currently, our ordinance allows us to make policy recommendations at the request of the chief or the city manager or on our own. If we get an investigation or we notice something about a policy, we can make a recommendation to the city manager or the chief to say, we think your policy should be changed to reflect X, Y, and Z. We can do that. The other thing that we can do that I think everybody knows is we can make recommendation on case findings, which are advisory only to the city manager. And those are for category 1 investigations only. At the bottom of the slide, you can see what the examples of category 1 formal investigations are, because I think everybody might not know them. Unnecessary or excessive response to resistance, false arrests, violations of criminal statutes, serious or significant complaints of misconduct, and any allegation of racial, sexual, gender bias, or sexual workplace harassment. So those are category 1. When those category 1 investigations are finished by internal affairs, the entire package of the investigation is provided to the members of our board. At that point in time, we have the ability to concur or disagree with the findings. And if we disagree, then we can say, we think the findings should be exonerated, unfounded. We have the ability to defer for more information, being mindful of the timelines that are in place in the structure of the law enforcement officers. And if we can't make a decision, we can specifically tell the city manager why we can't make a decision. The other thing that we have the ability to do is make a recommendation on the discipline that we see in the file. All we can do is say we agree with it or we disagree with it, and there should be more or less. And again, this is all advisory only to the city manager. Next slide, please. So really briefly, I wanted to tell you some of the things that our board has recently requested or accomplished. We've asked to be included in FLPD training wherever possible, and Interim Chief Dietrich, she was right on response, she was very responsive to that and immediately told us, how can we hook you up with some new body cam training? Anywhere we can learn, we all agree we want to learn. We have talked about a need for improved communication of when meetings are occurring to the public. At our last board meeting, we asked if we could please always be considered a stakeholder whenever matters relating to the police in our city are being discussed. About 2 weeks ago, we sent a communication to you all. That communication was a recommendation for 2 revisions to our ordinance and the corresponding policies. One was asking for the language to be added, giving us note to file monthly summaries, which was something that had been verbally agreed to, but we all want things to be, firm in the record. And we have also asked for discipline documents relating to the policy and ordinance, added to the policy and ordinance. Previously, we asked for year-end statistics on response to resistance and IA investigations. So we asked for that at the end of, as we approached the end of 2019, and for the first time in my time on the board, we got that for that year. And we have been told verbally that that will be part of what we get every year going forward. And we also invited the interim chief to attend our next meeting, and she's working on it. Next slide, please. So I think as we all think about where do we go from here, there are some key things that we all need to be considering. First of all, what is the best fit for our city? For socially, culturally, and politically, what is it that our city expects from volunteers like us on this board? We need to think about knowing what our ordinance gives us the ability to do now. Are we even accomplishing the goals that we're set up for? And also, we can have any suggestion that we want, and we can ask for anything on the planet. But if we do not have, I will call it the buy-in of City Hall and the police department and the community, we will not make any progress as volunteer members of this board. That is the end of my PowerPoint. So now I just think it's fine to open it up and talk about what our recommendations are. If nobody wants to start, I have a list that I can go down, but I think
Before you do
everybody's
that,
probably got something to say.
right, before you do that, let's hear from the members of your committee, from the board. Does anybody have anything they would like to comment on with regard to what Christina just discussed? Anyone raise their hand?
Yes, I'll go ahead and comment on it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gosh.
So thank you, Christina, for going over that. Christina, she definitely has been listening to the board recommendations, and we appreciate you taking the lead on this. As my time being on the board, I know that with the dealing with the public, they pretty much want a couple of things to happen. They want to make sure that complaints are being received by the police department, and they want to make sure that those complaints are being thoroughly investigated by the police department in an unbiased way. And over the years, from being on the board, I think that that's been our main focus, which is a good focus because it builds trust. And during the time that I've been on the board, we had citizens responded to the meetings about certain cases, and a couple of times we even had officers wrote in their response to a particular investigation. So it worked both ways. I think the officers as well as the public want to have that review of the process to make sure that the cases are thoroughly investigated, to make sure that we are receiving those complaints. And over the years, we have done a good job with that. Each chief has been very responsive to all of our requests, and we're just looking for more ways to improve and get better at it. From my understanding, I know that the commission had wanted to make a couple of recommendations to the board, and we're here today to also hear you all recommendations on how we can get better, how can we build the trust with the public to ensure that all investigation of misconduct or discourtesy is being investigated by internal affairs. And Christina wrapped it up in this presentation, and that's what I want to say.
Okay, anyone else on the board that would like to add to that?
Yeah,
Well,
Yes, Carol, yes.
yes, I would just simply like to add, I think Christina's presentation was encompassing of where we're coming from. And I truly believe that, again, I guess I harp on it a lot, but I think perception is everything.
Perception in what regard?
Perception.
Perception from whom?
Perception that what is going on.
You're breaking up,
Excuse me.
Carol. You're breaking.
Perception from the public. Yes, I know I am. I cannot help that. So are you. It's perception of the public and our city commission and all involved that we are doing our job, but that the police are working to make what they do. There are no secrets. There is no hidden agenda. I believe we work together, and I think we want the perception for everyone that is what the police are doing, and they are being forthcoming.
Okay. Anyone else wishes to add to that?
Mr. Mayor, good morning. I agree wholeheartedly with what Christina said. I would really like to stress that advertisement of our meetings be elevated almost to the same level as what is given to the city commission meetings to include the public. I'm very much concerned that the public be made aware of what's going on, have the opportunity to participate, and if they choose not to, that's their choice. But then it at least protects the city, the board, the commission, that we put forward our best effort to let them know that they have the opportunity to participate. So basically, if they choose not to, that's their choice. But it's not that we did not let people know that the meeting was going on, that they're invited to participate. And I think right now, with the heightened sensitivity of everybody in the community, that meetings need to be advertised properly. Not that they're not, but certain board meetings are just like posted, which meet the requirements of state law, but it's not necessarily published to the same degree as a city commission meeting might be. And I think we really need to stress including the public to allay any concerns that things are being done behind the scenes and not being done completely, and allow them the opportunity to participate.
Do you have any recommendations on how we can better advertise?
Again, I know it's an issue of cost, and I'm not suggesting that the city take out quarter-page ads the way they do for zoning changes and the like. But, you know, some board meetings typically are advertised and they meet the requirements of law by simply posting it on the bulletin board at City Hall. Obviously, things have changed right now. City Hall's closed to the public and the like. But, you know, the meeting requirement that is satisfied by doing that does not, in real world terms, reach out to the public the same way something that is advertised in a paper of general circulation. You know, many of you all, the electeds, have your own email boards that you send messages out on a regular basis. If you all would be willing to include meetings of our board in your messages that are going out to your constituents, that would be a great way to be more inclusive. And I don't think there's additional cost associated with that for the city.
I had also, this had come up a couple meetings back, and I had also gotten with Chris Lagerbloom and my commissioner, and I had suggested, why doesn't the strategic communications department at the city have a checkbox for police review board, so then people can sign up for that notice just like they're signing up for, you know, other alerts from the city. And really the response that I got back was that the information is on the website for the advisory boards.
Well, we can do a better job at that. I agree with you. The commissioners are all hearing what you're saying. I'll also put it in my newsletter. I think considering that this is very much on people's minds, just brace yourself for a lot of participation should that happen. But I think the more participation, the better. Okay, I got that.
All right, well, Mayor, can we get any feedback, Chris, on that? What else we could be doing differently, better?
I'm noticing these meetings you're saying?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I guess I'll take it from two perspectives. One, with those advertisements that are required by law in certain places and those that are required just as notice in other ways, I think we want to be careful that we don't commingle those and create an expectation that there's one level of, excuse me, of advertising in one circumstance and a different level in another. But I can talk with the clerk on that, see if there's any latitude to do more than just a front door posting, but something less than a planning and zoning board, you know, lawful type ad that we take in the paper. So that probably warrants some further review. With respect to how information is noticed through our boards and committees through our website, each board and committee has a published liaison. And what we've tried to do to streamline the information so that it's not just flowing around out there in some haphazard fashion is to funnel everything through the board liaison so that it gets out to the board and that there's a record that it gets out to the board. And I think that's what Christina is referring to when I said that the information was on the website. How to notify the liaison to each of the individual boards is there so that information is incoming to the board. It goes through that funnel point and then can be tracked as it goes out to board members. So that's our current practice. If we need to look at that and make enhancements or modifications, we certainly can.
But that's just to board members. That's not to the public.
That's what we put in place. So as far as notice to the public, I'll have to have that discussion with Jeff to see if we can.
Yeah, I think there are ways we can do it.
Or do something different that is more encompassing than what we're already doing.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. First of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you for all of your work, especially also to our chair.
Wait, Vice Mayor, before you begin, I want to make sure that everybody from the board has completed their comments before we switch over to the commission.
Well, no, I didn't want to switch over. I just had a question about what we're talking about.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Chris, every single board in the city and committee, are all of the meetings posted on the calendar that we have on our website, every single meeting?
Yes. Look to the clerk for an answer. Yes.
Yes, so this board's meetings are also published on our calendar.
Yes,
Okay, I just want to make sure that's happening. Thank you.
they, Vice Mayor, they should be published on the event calendar
Yes,
and they should be published on their specific page. The agenda is normally posted on the specific page where their minutes are also posted. And
okay,
on
good.
that
No,
page, there is also a link to participate in a virtual manner, just like the public can for our meetings.
thank you. I asked that because we often, when we send information out to our district, include the calendar. So we always send people to the calendar to see what's going on. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Christina, anybody else on your board that would like to add to the conversation?
Well, I don't know, but I did see Chief Dietrich with her hand up.
I think before we go to
Hey.
Bernadette wanted to say something.
Okay.
I,
Oh, Bernadette. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just simply wanted to say that I'm one of the newer members to this board, but I do know that we have really great leadership in our chair, Curry, and our vice chair, Stone. And the fact that you all as commissioners are all on this line today really speaks to the fact that you really want to see transparency, which is all that, even the discussion about the notice provisions, that really deals with transparency. And I think that's what the public wants to understand and see. And just one final comment, to the extent that you're looking for ways, I think your newsletters are good opportunities. I know that there are mailers that go out. I don't know if things still go out in the water bills, but that may be an opportunity. And I do know that one of the things that seems to get the word out, and I'm not sure how they're meeting these days, but the neighborhood, there's a neighborhood association of, different presidents and groups that meet. And I can't think of the name of the president now, but that is probably a really good way to try to get that information.
Pauline Lockwood.
Yeah, I'm actually an officer on that board, Bernadette, and I do share it with those.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of them are like, oh, we didn't know this existed, and I'm just kind of like, okay.
So anyway, those are some ways, but thank you all. Thanks for listening and look forward to more conversation.
Thank you. Anybody else from the board?
Chief Dietrich, did you want to add to this?
I did, although I'm not on the board. So
Yeah, but look, I'm laughing because your little blue handprints up there like that.
I wasn't sure how to get in there, so I figured I'd hit the little button there. So the whole board is different from the last time I've seen everybody except for Christina. So hello, I'm your new interim police chief. Just listening to some of the things, I'm very open on the training issue here. I actually want to bring in the CPRB and maybe some elected officials to a bunch of our training. So that way you kind of get an idea of why we do what we do, how we do it, how we explain it, and a little bit of more hands-on so that you can make those appropriate decisions for yourself on why we do things. So not just the body worn camera that we're going to bring you in a few weeks, but DT training or firearms training or anything that you guys have questions about. There's nothing we do here that's a big secret. I mean, obviously there's certain tactical operations that we don't want out there, but for training purposes, we can answer anything. We can put you in any situation. We can show you and explain how we escalate, how we de-escalate, and everything else. There's nothing really secret here. And I encourage you guys to come on over and get that experience. As for the annual use of force report, I'm not really sure why you haven't gotten that, because we do that every year I remember doing it when I was over there in IA back in, I don't know, 15, 16, something like that. So that's done every year. So that's really not a problem to get you that. And then I don't know, and Brad would have to say we could or couldn't do this, but when you're talking about putting that on websites and stuff, I don't know if I'm allowed, but we have on the website of the police department a news section, and I wouldn't have any problems putting that announcement up there, because people are probably going to think, well, if it's a police department thing, maybe the police department has information on their website. So they may go to our website and we have a news section. So if that's not a violation of any rule or whatever, that's certainly another opportunity that we can get that out there for you. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm open. Our police department's open. We have nothing to hide. We are all about fairness and transparency. So we welcome all your questions and whatever you want, we are here to provide for you.
Thank you
Great,
so much.
Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, so, okay, so we got through the recommendations, but now, before I go through what I have as a list, why don't you guys tell us what it is you think we should be doing differently?
So let's go through the members of the commission. We'll start with District 1. Commissioner Moritas, do you have any thoughts you'd like to add to this?
Mayor, I won't take up too much time as we continue this conversation. First of all,
Wait a minute, you're breaking in and out. Could you just go on video, on audio instead of video? Maybe that'll help.
stop my video, okay? Does that help?
Yeah, much better.
That's much better? Okay. All righty, so you can't see me, but that's okay. Thank you again for volunteering on this board. I appreciate you all. And I really appreciate going over your main goal, to review citizens' complaints, make sure everyone's being heard, everything's being reviewed and investigated. And I appreciate what you said, at the beginning, you said, how do we make our community better? And that's why we're all here serving. So I'd like to go over a couple of thoughts that I have about that. I know last time we spoke about the policing issue, I did ask, Chris, our city manager, if there was maybe a national organization that could come in and help review our policies and just make sure they're aligned with best practices. So maybe Chris can give us that update from the National Police Foundation, kind of where we are with that. That was one of my ideas. Another idea I had, I just saw this also, the Alliance sent this email out, and I did discuss this with Chris to see if there was any local training that we could all get trained on from your board and to us as commissioners and even our police department, if they're interested, just about some of the racial, inequities that exist in our community and the history of them. And it seems like this groundwater approach to addressing racial inequities, which is put on by the county, maybe something for us to look into as commissioners. I mean, I'd like to be trained on it, so I will participate in this through the Alliance if we choose not to do it as a group, but I think it may be beneficial for us as a group to participate. So that's something I think would be helpful for me. And I think what's really important too is we always have to kind of keep saying what's next. How do we continue these conversations, and how do we bring all the players together in our community to really, in addition to what the police department is, how do we lift everybody up in our community from a collaborative way? So I think I would really love to see somebody come in and lead some conversations around that topic. Maybe, like I said, we bring someone in and your board's involved, the commission's involved, representatives from the community are involved, from the nonprofits, the education community, maybe the faith community, the mental health community, even our local soccer team. Maybe they'd want to be a part of that. I'd like to know what we can all do. What can we all do collectively, collaboratively to help and lift up our entire community? So that's where my thoughts go when I hear about this. I appreciate what we're doing with our police right now, but I also kind of want to take it to that next level too. So those are my three takeaways. I'd like someone to come in and look at our policies. I'd like to get some training myself and with you all if you want to know more about, like I said, this groundwater approach, and then what can we do to keep the conversation going in our community. Thank you.
Sure. Have you ever attended the Citizen Police Academy?
No, I have not. That might be interesting. I did, what did I do? I did CERT. I'm a CERT person. I did that, but not the police. But, so that maybe.
It's like it's a 12-week course. I know I took it. I had to take it many years ago before I became a member of this particular board, and it's very educational. It does tell you and show you some of the procedures. Integrate it. You go on a ride along. There are all kinds of things that help integrate your knowledge into what's going on in the police department. So I'd recommend that to anybody that's on the commission who hasn't yet done.
appreciate it, Bruce. I have done the ride-alongs, and I've done stuff like that. I think we're at a place right now in our society, and when we were talking the history, we kind of where we are today. I think we skipped over that a little bit, but I think that is really where we need to go, and I think that's always part of our conversation. So I'm not even talking about just focusing on the police, because they're one part of this whole puzzle. I want to keep saying, how do we all come together from, this board, from our commission, from the whole community. So like I said, I think we all have more education. We have the opportunity to be educated. We have the opportunity to collaborate, and we have the opportunity to, be effective and impact some change. And I think we still need to change a little bit more. And I want to keep providing the opportunities to as an entire city. And I'm not pointing out just our police department. I'm talking about all of us. So.
All right. All right, thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll just keep the audio on. Hopefully that'll help with the sound. Again, I want to just say good morning, everyone, and thank you for your work. And Madam Chair, thank you especially for the PowerPoint and all of your work. And I know how much of import this is to you, and I really appreciate your passion and your work on this. So thank you. I just want to have a question for Chris, actually. At a recent City Commission meeting, we did discuss expanding responsibilities for this particular board, and we also talked about a consultant to work with the board and us. So can you please let me know what the status of that is, Chris?
Again, and then I'll turn it over. Didn't know if you wanted me to respond after each commissioner, or you wanted me to wait till the end.
Let's just wait till the end,
I can
Vice
answer.
Mayor, so that he can give us a complete report.
Great. I'm good. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Robert.
You have to unmute yourself, Commissioner.
I'll go last. I'm taking down some notes. I'll go last.
Okay, Ben.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all. Really appreciate all of your work. Look, I think our Fort Lauderdale Police Department is doing an amazing job. I think Interim Chief's doing a fantastic job. And even top performing individuals, departments can always get better. Every department in our city can get better. I can get better, all of us. So we need to continue to strive for excellence and improvement. And that's, to me, that's our focus here is you all and Interim Chief and City Manager. And I'm excited about that. And I want to execute. So I just want to move things forward, get ideas, get suggestions, move it, improve, be the best we possibly can be. Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to you, Robert.
Okay. Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the board chair, Christina, and the board for your recent efforts in our recent situations where we were polarized nationally in national headlines for wrongdoing. So I don't want to use today as a pat myself on the back type situation. And I don't need to be trained. I'm not a police officer. I need to be assured that we are doing the right things that we need to do so the public can trust us and the transparency is there. The present situation with this board is amazing. What we've done since our two major incidents that occurred here in the city of Fort Lauderdale. You guys, I think you asked the right questions. You did the right things, and I'm very much satisfied with that. But what I'm grappling with right now is kind of what the board chair alluded to earlier when she gave us the 3 illustrations of what we can do, and some of those being very, very costly. And I know I was supposed to spearhead the independent group on behalf of the commission to answer the vice mayor's question. That has not happened yet. No one's reached out to me. That's not a problem. But I think if we can give this board, based on what I heard from the chair, the tools they need that have teeth in it to affect change, impact change, and make that change as necessary. The past, again, is what concerns me. I don't think we're better. I think we made some changes to get through the tough times. Again, we were cast in a national headline on misconduct, by our officers, and that concerns me. I don't think anyone's more involved with our police than I am. I have been from the onset and not taking anything from anybody else. I've just done a deeper dive with them. Have a very good relationship, but I want to continue that, and by the same time assure my community that we've taken the right steps. So going back to Christina's illustrations, I know she wanted that first one that gave them, more power, but it appears to me that they can only report to the board, the chief, and the city manager. I'm okay with that if they have the tools with the teeth to make the change, because right now what's going on nationally has happened here in this city. So I want to turn that corner, but when I turn it, when I speak and I talk about how great my police department is or our police department is, I want to be assured of that. And I think the way the board functions now doesn't give them the tools in the toolkit that they need to assure this commission and myself in particular. So that concerns me more. I don't want to belabor a national headline of the injustices. And I often speak from my own experiences. I've been here 50 some odd plus years, and I've had many interactions with the police where I was the one they pulled over. I was the one that had the bad experiences, the bad relationships, but that didn't stop me from getting here as a commissioner and trying to develop a relationship to understand what it is they do and why is it they do the things that they do. So the national treatment of Black people is my issue, because in recent news reports, I'm not condoning bad behavior, but a traffic stop or interaction with a police officer doesn't mean you should lose your life. And it's happening more and more now. And I just want to make sure we can get ahead of that and give this board the tools they need so I can sleep at night knowing that Fort Lauderdale put its best foot forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. So getting back to the three types of oversight models that that board is put forth today, I think that even from my own experience being on the board, one of the most frustrating things has been relying upon internal affairs to supply the board with the evidence that's necessary in order to make a balanced review and recommendation. And my frustration back then, I think it's still felt today, is that the board never feels like it gets the whole story. And when asked, why wasn't this witness approached and why didn't this witness give a statement? Oftentimes we were told, well, they weren't available, they didn't answer the phone calls. And we never really felt that that was the complete answer. And so when we talk about independent investigations, I don't really think we really want to go around internal affairs. I think we want to complement internal affairs and add to their investigatory procedures. And I think that is kind of the crux of what is going on here in terms of trying to maintain a balance between the civilian approach and the police approach in making their investigations. Too often we hear anecdotally how a lot of investigations are buried in internal affairs because of friends, because they look bad for the department. And while a wrong may have been committed, feel that sometimes those wrongs are not redressed, and so we have failed. We failed the community in not making sure that these violations are reviewed and appropriate discipline meted out. An example of this, of course, is going to be what we heard a few months ago when we heard the recordings and the videos on the body camera for a particular officer. Not so much that happened this year, but last year, where excessive force, certain language, just a lot of things that did not bode well for proper discipline within the police department. Something tells me that if the rest of the department heard about this or knew about this, they would equally be upset over the fact that one of the fellow officers was undertaking their role in such a way. Well, we need to be examining the body camera footage. We need to be reporting this on a regular basis and not ignoring it. We need to be much more comprehensive in our approach to understanding how our officers who are on the front line are dealing with situations. Are they provoking, or are they trying to mitigate certain situations? And I think the board is on the right track in asking for these things. And I think the commission, from what I've heard in the past and today, is eager to move in that direction, to be able to more completely investigate police behavior and to try to figure out best practices going forward based on situations that we learn about through the experience that we're now understanding is going on. Christina, do you feel that is that consistent with what the board is looking to do?
I mean, I think I can summarize everything that all of you are raising and say, yes, a lot of what you're saying is what we're trying to do. But I think that what I'm noticing is that this is such a big topic. A lot of the things that I'm hearing are things that the fix doesn't come from this board. The reassurance needs to come from outside this board, from the leadership at the police department. And I think that it's my understanding that there are some changes that are taking place over there. And so, maybe we could all use some education on what changes have already been made to address some of these issues. But I think that if the reason why we're here today is to talk about what can this board do, then we need to focus on what we want the board to do, or we're going to run out of time, honestly.
Right.
If it's okay with everybody, I want to share the recommendations that I came up with just from on my own, and then listening to what everybody's saying. And I think that it covers a lot of what y'all are raising. So the first thing is that the more information that the board sees, the more we learn, the more feedback we can provide, and I think the greater level of confidence everyone in our community has. So I would suggest that adding category 2 complaints to our intent and purpose in our ordinance would be a good idea, because then we're not just seeing things that fall in the terms of the most serious, we're seeing the things that are less serious. And then once something comes to us, maybe we notice, hey, there's this big issue here and let's fix it. And in my opinion, if we have to make the recommendation to the commission, you all are going to support it because it seems like we're all on the same page here. So that would be my first thing, adding category 2 complaints to being investigations that are presented to the board.
Mayor, so how are we going to go ahead?
Where category 2 complaints identified? I see category 1.
Right, because the reason why you see that is because right now we only get category 1. So category 2, and Chief, please, or anybody, please correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but I'm going to summarize. Category 2 is a complaint about inadequate police service, and any allegations against a member of the police department that are not category 1.
Oh.
Okay, so give us category 1 and then give us everything else.
Okay.
Okay,
So Mayor, just a process question. How are we, so it sounds like, you know, Christina's going to give us several suggestions or something, things she thinks we should be implemented. So how are we going to process through this? Are we going to like get the list and then?
Well, I think we should then hear from the city manager, and then let the city manager orchestrate next steps, because clearly whatever changes have to be made by the commission.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
I'm going to capture notes just so everybody has benefit. I'm going to capture notes, respond to the ones that I can today, the ones that I need input from the chief on. I'll respond to everybody collectively later. And then I would like to address training, consulting, and further review before we're done.
So do we have all of Christina's recommendations is the question I would ask right now.
Well, she's still going.
I'm still going, but I can give them back to you guys later.
Okay.
All right, but articulate them now, and then we'll.
Okay. So my first one, again, it's add category 2 complaints to being materials that are investigations that are given to this board. So that would be need to add it into 2-248 intents and add it to our purpose 2-249A. And wherever I'm saying that I think we need a change to our ordinance, I would like to see that tracked in the policy for IA's responsibilities so that we can make sure nothing is getting lost anywhere. We're not relying on any oral history anymore where things are getting lost. Okay, my next one. So currently in the ordinance, our duties allow us to make recommendations about policies. If Chris asks, if the chief asks, or if we want to. Well, I think let's add training recommendations to that, because that would be a department wide if you add it to duties there. Okay, so that's my next one. And then we can make decisions, right? So I think that it would be a good idea if we can make a decision saying this officer needs more or less discipline, then add to the ordinance that we can also make a recommendation on training which may be beneficial to the officer involved. The city attorney would need to tell us if we're making a recommendation on training, do we have to tell him why we're making that recommendation? And we need to understand that if we have to say what type of training we're suggesting somebody gets, well, that's fine, but then we need to be educated on what is on the menu for training. My next one, I would like to see language added to the ordinance on the review of annual reports, because we heard from Chief Dietrich say that it's been there and she doesn't know why we haven't been getting it, but we haven't been getting it until I asked for it at the end of 2009. I mean, it seems to me that this is the perfect board to be looking at a year-end summary, and why not memorialize it in the ordinance? So it would be the response to resistance and the IA summaries providing annually. And then in addition, if you look at the police policy on bias-based policing, there's reference in there to annual reports that are generated relating to bias-based policing at the department level. There's one that's an annual admin review of bias-based policing and department practices concerning bias-based policing, which is submitted to the chief. That's done by IA. And then there's another one that is an admin review of agency policy and practice for bias-based policies and practice relating to traffic stops. So that's what Commissioner McKenzie's talking about. So that's done by the staff inspections office. So why not give that to the board too? My point is that if this department is doing things that is an annual review, then let the stakeholders see what the annual reports are saying, because maybe we have something that we would like to know is better than we thought, or where we can go from there. And then I have one more, and I noticed that in the policy, when you look at the training, there is bias-based policing requirement, but the current frequency is only every 4 years. I think that frequency needs to be faster. I mean, needs to be more frequent, because every 4 years, it's like every time something terrible happens is every 4 years. So why aren't we doing this more frequently? So those are mine that I'm asking to be in the ordinance and replicated in IA's responsibilities. I did my best to try to put together everything that I think has come up over the years, but I would love to hear what else everybody else has on the board, what you think, or what's missing.
Is anyone on the board wishing to add to that list?
Mr.
Carol?
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I agree with what Christina said. I think those are positive things and it adds to the transparency. The one other thing I would like to see if we're talking about amending the ordinance would be that some thought be given, and I'm just tossing it out there. There's currently no restriction on who can be chair or vice chair. And the police department is doing an admirable job, but from a community appearance, perception, reality standpoint, the vice chair is a member of the police department. And again, there's no issue with them doing what they're doing, but from a community perception reality standpoint, that might be something that just comes back to potentially bite the city as far as, are we really doing what we say we're doing, or is it all a facade? And, you know, perhaps we might want to make an ordinance amendment, again, subject to the city attorney's input and obviously the elected's inputs. But perhaps since it's a Citizens Police Advisory Board, it has a governing board made up of the citizens.
And so do you not see membership from the police department? Do you think they should just be
No,
outside advisors or?
No. Let me take back a soundbite. You know, I think they should be part of the panel. Absolutely, totally, without a doubt. I just don't know that they should be a chair or vice chair, because if you look at Citizens Police Advisory Board and you see, you know, a sergeant or a lieutenant as a chair or vice chair or whatever else, it's sort of like the fox watching the hen house. And it may not be, and it most definitely is not. But the perception that the public sees could lead to that conclusion.
Okay. Anyone else wish to add to that?
Well, I'll just chime in here just very briefly. I think from the few meetings I've either observed or sat in, I found in this particular instance where we have the vice chair as someone who gives invaluable information. And, you know, if he didn't have a uniform on, I'd even question whether he was the police voice on the board. So I don't know, and I wouldn't want to necessarily limit in the event you have someone who is eminently familiar, qualified, vocal, not afraid to stand up and even say things that are, in some cases, maybe his colleagues may feel like they're being brushed against by his.
We lost you. We lost you. What's happening with Bernadette?
She's still.
Need that to say.
Bernadette, we can't hear you. Bernadette, we cannot hear you.
I think we literally did just lose her.
We lost her. Okay, Carol, did you want to add to this?
And I just feel that Christina has really worked very diligently to get this together. I think she's speaking for all of us, truthfully, Mayor.
Okay, great.
I wanted to add one more thing, if I may. Oh, go ahead, Vice Chair.
All right, can you hear me now? All right, so I just want to make a point with what one of the board members said, is that just so you all know, is that every position here on the board is a voted position. I think that the members should be allowed to vote whoever they want to vote for, the chair or the vice chairperson. Given that, and also each person has a signal vote, so doesn't matter who's the head of it or who's the vice chair. The vote remain the same. They have no power, no more powers than any board members. And I think that it shows a board that is representative of the people whenever those two positions are left to the will of the board members.
Okay,
That's all.
okay. Is Bernadette back?
She was back on, but I don't think she's on now.
Anybody else from the board want to add to this?
I wanted to add two things. First
Yes.
of all, I want to say that, you know, if the board doesn't want a police officer serving as chair or vice chair, then they don't have to vote for them. And there's more of us as civilians than there are as police officers. And I also think that if we ran into an issue where somebody was running amok in their leadership, then there would probably be something that we could do as a board to, you know, vote to get those people off. I think it's important for us to all be able to work together to get progress together as civilians and law enforcement, because if we expect to make things better outside of here, then we have to be able to do it together here. So I don't know that I personally have an issue with a police officer being a chair or a vice chair. My concern is more an environment where everybody feels empowered to challenge the voices of authority. And I think having a board where it's a safe place for us to do that, and people don't end up hating me because every time I might always be outspoken or whatever, I think it'll be okay. And then going back to what somebody else said, I do think as far as the recommendations, something that we could look into, or the commission could look into, is how do we address the fact that this board has to rely so heavily on FLPD. Because as nice as everybody is, I do feel that there are times when the responses or the dialogue might sound differently if it wasn't coming from a staff of people in internal affairs. But if there's no budget to give us a third person, then a third party, then we have no choice but to rely on whoever you give us from internal affairs. But it is awkward, and everybody who's volunteering may not feel comfortable to work to their fullest capacity when they know that they're pushing back against a police officer in those meetings and asking questions.
What's an example of a third party?
I was going to ask the same question.
Well, I mean, you know, maybe you could hire someone who they're putting everything together from internal affairs, and they're making sure that everything comes back. Or I don't know, because sometimes it seems like it might slow us down, but I do know that sometimes when you start asking questions and you're getting, you know, you can kind of, sometimes you feel the tone in people that there's an explanation for everything. And that doesn't always feel helpful as a civilian.
Chris, could that be someone like a staff liaison to the board?
No, I think what she's referring to is
an external party. I think
it's an external party, like an investigator. You know, someone who will speak with an objective voice. Who I get where Christina's going on this, because it's exactly the way I felt always. You know, to get an independent perspective on interviews, on data collection, on a summary of that data, understanding, you know, from a non-police perspective, you know, trying to advise and interpret, or at least provide information that the board itself can interpret, done so in a way that doesn't seem like it's been tainted by the investigation done by the police department.
So like a mediator, or like an outside attorney, or?
Yeah, well, kind of. That could work.
Yeah, it might be an outside investigator.
An outside private investigator.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand. Okay.
Yeah. Not a mediator, because they don't, I've been in front of enough mediators. They're not investigatory. They're just there to listen.
I think this might be something that the police practices expert, whoever the city decides to retain, they may offer a solution as to who would be the appropriate expert to help us in this situation. I don't think we have to figure out who it is. I think we have to all agree to look at what our options are.
Yeah,
because I don't think our options are exclusively this board has to always be working with internal affairs and also checking internal affairs works. That's weird.
All right, Chris, do you want to respond to these?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Let me take a minute. Let me just see what order I want to do this in. So let me respond first to what Christina just mentioned with her list, and then I'll go back and follow up on going forward, some department training, city training, and consulting type work that we've got close to lined up and ready to go. So Christina, I said I was going to react today to the list that you brought up. I'll react quickly by saying none of them look to be that difficult or that would be something that we would suggest is not appropriate to move forward with. Before I commit, though, I do want to have the opportunity to consult with the city attorney and make sure that none of the items that you've suggested would either have to be bargained, for example, in any of the collective bargaining agreements to add category 2 to the category 1. Just want to do some housekeeping to make sure that I don't agree to something that I can't agree to by policy or contract. But none of the examples that you brought up caused me a terrible amount of concern. So we'll, if you wouldn't mind sending me that list, I know you probably have it typed up. I did my best to take shorthand notes, but yours probably are more complete than the notes that I took as you were talking.
Okay, I'll send it.
Perfect. With respect to training and consulting and citywide training, I do want to touch on the fact that the police internal to their organization has started procedural justice and the art of connecting training. That first class actually happened yesterday and is ongoing. Will be training that occurs at all levels in the department. I am in the final series of negotiations with the National Police Foundation to do an assessment post Bobcat and an assessment against the recommendations of the 21st Century Policing Task Force report. I shared with them the Bobcat report and sort of experts in the area said that was a good previous assessment, but it might be limited or structured differently now because there's been changes obviously in policing and professional policing since that Bobcat report occurred. So some of the things that I think that we can get some benefit from looking into with these pillars is policy and oversight, technology, community policing and crime reduction, training, evaluation, officer wellness and safety. The list goes on, dealing with professional, ethical, and fair policing. And so once I get to a final place with working with them, I'll bring that to the chief and see that is something that we can move forward on in our department. I also want to tell you that in Fort Lauderdale and also countywide through the Broward City and County Managers Association, we're working with the Broward County Human Services Office of Equity and Investment and looking at what training opportunities they have for not only, really not the police department, but more holistically and across the board, elected officials, appointed officials, as well as city employees. Commissioner Moritas mentioned the groundwater program as a quick immersion into, right now, a virtual immersion into a practical understanding and training for organizations to understand what structural racism is. This has been taught to elected officials and senior leaders and public safety command staff across Broward County. I think there's an opportunity to bring that to our organization, as well as some training beyond that, that once a dialogue continues and if people better understand the topics, that there's a way to move forward with a continued dialogue and how these issues affect both Fort Lauderdale and Broward County. So more information on that to come, but I think you're going to see us do that as well as many of the other cities in the county, so that this discussion that has started doesn't stop. Check my notes here. Talked about that.
All right, so circling back,
that's what I have.
All right, so circling back to what Christina's last said, can you inquire with other jurisdictions to see if they've engaged outside investigators and what practices they undertook and what kind of costs we're looking at for something like that, and then come back to the commission with a report on that?
I can. I'm probably gonna have to rely on Alan and his team too to
Yeah, because typically
help there.
the investigators only know one jurisdiction. That was sort of not necessarily struck down by the Florida Supreme Court, but in a great part.
I can't hear you, Alan. Speak up, please.
I am aware of one jurisdiction, but it depends what you mean by investigator and at what point you're talking about. If you're looking at either an investigatory person of complaints or concurrent to IA, they're not going to exist necessarily in Florida because they're unlawful.
So you had mentioned that to me in our conversation yesterday, but then when I read in the newspaper that Miami-Dade is going to implement such a thing, and not one bit of discussion ever came up about whether or not their hands were tied by the state. Can you could you call them up and say, hey, how are you doing this?
I can't, but we've sort of looked at that before. And the Florida Supreme Court was pretty clear to them previously in the decision, I think in 2015.
You're still doing it?
Miami will do what Miami will do, but yeah, the Supreme Court was very clear on that.
If I may, I don't think we should get stuck on the term investigator. I think there is probably a police practices expert out there who could fill this job. If we're married to the term investigator, I think it's going to cause a lot of pushback and concern. You don't necessarily need an investigator if you're not having them investigate. There could be a police practices expert who could fill this role.
All right, so that's something we got to pursue. All right, does anyone else from the commission want to add to this discussion? Because clearly we've given a lot to the city manager to research and get back to the commission on. We'll probably bring it up at a conference meeting, and we'll have that noticed. Anything else you want to add to the discussion before we conclude?
Mayor, I think we should plan on establishing a reconvening of ourselves and the Citizens Police Review Board to evaluate progress and so forth. And I think in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever that might be.
Well, so I agree with you. So let's bring it back at a conference meeting and and then the public can speak at that time. And then we'll have an opportunity to see what the city manager's been able to find. I think that the board's recommendations are well taken, and I would love to see what best practices are in other jurisdictions to see how we can beef up our approach to the charge that we've given our board. So does anybody else have any other comments they'd like to make?
I have a comment.
Yes, Robert.
Well, a couple of things that the city manager mentioned. He leaned towards Broward County as reaching out as an example, but Broward County has not exemplified to me that they're in any better shape than we are. So I don't think it's a matter of finding the best practice of another municipality, because I think nationwide we're dealing with this issue. I think we've heard the cries of the people, and I think they entrust us as a commission to use our powers, our policies, to put in place that what we think is best. Because if you keep asking the police, you keep asking the state of Florida, FDLE, I still think you're talking to the same people, and no one's trying to create a rift. We're just trying to give this transparency look that we're looking for. Miami-Dade did. They didn't go asking anybody. The commissioners took a leap of faith, and they did it. And also the manager mentioned that, he leaned his understanding on the Bobcat report. Well, the Bobcat report was probably 5 or 6 years old. I think it was great back then because we had another wave of something that was a wrongdoing of the officers, an injustice to Black people. And we reached out. You were on that commission. We sanctioned this report, and we got the information we were looking for, and we made some recommendations. I think now we still need to go out and get that independent arm you even spoke about earlier, to get the information that we need to make sure we're making the right changes. And we talked about lack of dollars for this position or for anything that we're trying to do. We're passing our budget. And can someone tell me that we don't have dollars for this person, not investigator, this person, staff person to perform some of the requests of the board once we give them the tools they need in their toolkit. So I don't know if we have to ask the city attorney. I don't know if we have to ask our neighbors. I think we just need to make a decision that this is what we want, and staff provides it for us.
I think I agree with you. The reason why I say let's look and see what other people are doing is because sometimes these other places have been court tested. I don't want the city to be sued if we can avoid it. I know we're not shy at taking on lawsuits, but if we could see how it's worked best in other communities, that's all I was really saying. But I agree with you. We need to move forward and be our person.
I agree, but even if you think about right now, every injustice is a lawsuit. We have lawsuits right now based on what is happening. So, I mean, I don't have a problem falling in that gray area if I made a decision about trying to do the right thing.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can speak just very briefly.
Yes.
I apologize. I dropped off earlier. My screen just froze, so I came back in on my phone. But I wanted to say, and I don't speak for our chair, but I don't know that it would be necessary for a full-time person, Madam Chair. This would be on an as-needed basis, I'm thinking, which may allow for, consultant type services as needed to fit the bill of the issues that present themselves. And so if that shapes a budgetary issue a little bit better to allow for, what we're seeking, maybe that will help.
Okay. All right. We'll take that in consideration. All right. Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add?
Mayor, I just want to, if I may, just correct the record that Tanya Johnson is a member, and thank Chair Curry for pointing that out when I was doing roll call. I just misinterpreted her term. So
was Tanya on the call?
She was not able to attend.
She was not able to attend. Okay. All right. Very good. Christina, anything else you'd like to add?
No. I want to thank you all for being willing to have this conversation today. I want to thank everybody for their patience with regards to me. I know sometimes I might be a little bit challenging and might irritate some, but when I tell you that I'm doing it because I think that it's the right thing, and I think that all my colleagues here are doing the same thing, I mean it. So please consider us a resource to improve our community.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. There being nothing more, then this workshop is now concluded. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.